You sort of mentioned some of the uh, sort of becoming AI ready and so on, but are there any sort of other legal implications with data privacies and these sorts of things we need to be aware of?
Absolutely. You need to, I think a lot of customers, if they haven't asked already, are wondering how you're using AI as a business. I think it's really important to be transparent about that. Um, and that could be in the form of actually, an email communication to your customers, but also just in terms of your terms and conditions when they're onboarding and things like that.
Yep.
Um, and again, within this field, that's critical because you are handling, business commercial information, and that needs to be safeguarded and used in the right way. Now, you don't want to lose out. You don't want to, be so scared of AI that you don't leverage it. But you also need to do it in a secure way. I think implementing sort of processes and policies within the business, so extending out in terms of what I just said about training your staff, is actually putting in processes. So, for example, Thriday has a business continuity plan. Thriday has a plan if there's a bug in production. We now have a plan around how we use AI. And it articulates, it's like a 10-page document. It articulates how we use it, how we make sure that it's not going to be misused, and how we ensure that the data that we're putting in into these various tools is secure and safeguarded. All of these tools also have their own different, um, you know, their own policies about how they're handling data. For example, some of them will only store data in Australia. Some of them may store data overseas. So these are things that your policy should articulate. I can't guide you on that. But all I would say, some people perhaps only want that data to be stored in Australia versus other markets where it can be used for nefarious. And then finally, I just think training. Train the team, and make sure that you run regular cycles of processes to make sure that people are adhering to these standards and policies you have in place. And I know this might sound like a bit like a joke and it's tongue in cheek, but you could actually leverage a chat GPT or something to help you create these policies and guidelines and to help you set up a training program for your staff.
It's exactly what I was thinking. Why not use the technology to create the system, the process, and the training development? To me, it's a funny thing. You sort of mentioned a lot of the team training. I remember running a masterclass last year, and it was around data protection, data breaches, and the ability to, again, you sort of honed into there in terms of the education of the team and the constant training around the team. So, again, things maybe when we're running a business, we don't sometimes think about, because whether it's about AI and continuing to educate our team members, or whether it's around data security breaches, as an example, the ability for even nowadays, I don't think there's a day that goes past where AI is not in the news about something trying to trick someone, and that's sort of usually how it works. We get tricked into something, and suddenly we're giving them access to our data or our server or whatever it may be, our cloud, whatever it may be nowadays. It's an interesting one to continue to just educate, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think with this, it's important that you, as a business owner, invest the time in upskilling yourself so that you can sort of talk from a position of confidence with your team.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. I think, there's a lot of content online about, best practice in this area. And it just takes a little bit of reading and I guess information gathering to establish your own internal process.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, just in case you're wondering, like a very specific example I would say is that you may generate a P&L, balance sheet, cash flow statement for your customer. And today, if you wanted to, you could upload that into ChatGPT or some other tool and ask for that to be analyzed, to generate a forecast, to provide a written summary, all of those things. Now, that's great, but it's also important to note then that business data could be in the public domain. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean you don't do that, but there's ways to mitigate those risks. Do you upload the data in an anonymized way? As a very simple example. Yep. Or Are there specific accounting tools where you know that that data is not going to be available in the public domain? It's very locked down, it's very restricted. So you still get the benefit of being able to leverage that type of tech, but without obviously taking the risk of your client's data going out in the public.
Yeah, so making sure that you've got some protection around that as well. So you understand that while all of this sounds great and can be beneficial to you, what's your, like anything, like I always start with the number one question, well, what's the risk? What's the risk to the business? And maybe that's sometimes come to the top of the strategy for all of this is in what are the elements we need to continually have a look at from a risk point of view.
And I can guarantee your staff, some of your staff are already doing this, but
Well,
they're probably just not informed. They don't know
yeah.
that it's risky. They don't know that it could lead to data being in the public domain. So it's important you get on this right away and start running some sessions with them.
Michael, thanks again, mate. I really appreciate it. It's always great to catch up with great people doing great things in the marketplace. And I wish you all the best with Thriday, that's for sure.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
My pleasure.